Here, sweetie, my mother-in-law smiled, handing my nephew a brand new iPad. And this is for your college fund, she said, slipping him an envelope thick with cash. Then she turned to my 7-year-old daughter Emma and handed her a dollar store coloring book. This is for you. The room went dead silent. Hi, I'm Clara Bennett, and I'm 43 years old. What you just heard wasn't a one-time thing, it was my reality for years. I'm a single mom working as a nurse practitioner in Ohio. After my husband died in a car accident 3 years ago, I thought my in-laws would step up to help Emma feel loved and supported. Instead, they made it crystal clear that she was their least favorite grandchild. I wasn't asking for handouts or special treatment. I had a good job, and Emma never went without. But I couldn't understand why a 7-year-old had to pay the price for their twisted family politics. Emma would come home from family gatherings asking me why Grandma didn't love her like she loved her cousins. How do you explain that to a child who's already lost her father? If you've ever watched your child be treated as less than by family, drop your location in the comments right now. I read every one and your story matters to me. What my mother-in-law didn't know was that I'd been quietly documenting everything. Every slight, every gift disparity, every cruel comment. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't getting mad, it's getting even. Last Christmas at their house was when everything finally exploded. My mother-in-law, Diane, had arranged all the grandchildren's gifts under the tree. The red and gold wrapping paper gleamed under the lights. My nephew Jake got a $500 gaming system. My niece Sophia received a laptop for school. When it was Emma's turn, Diane handed her a used puzzle, not even in its original box. The cardboard edges were bent and faded. I thought she might like this, Diane said with fake sweetness. It's educational. Emma looked confused and hurt. Grandma, why didn't I get something new like Jake and Sophia? Diane's response still makes my blood boil. Well, sweetie, your cousins have been so good this year. Maybe next year you'll earn something special too. I watched my daughter's face crumble. This was a child who'd lost her father, maintained straight A's, and helped me around the house without complaint. What exactly did she need to earn? The worst part? The rest of the family just sat there. My brother-in-law actually nodded in agreement. My sister-in-law smirked. Not one person defended my little girl. When Emma started crying, Diane had the audacity to say, "Oh, don't be dramatic, it's just a gift." That's when I knew I was done playing nice. As we were leaving, I overheard Diane telling her neighbor at the door. The cold December air bit at our faces as we walked to the car. Clara's daughter is so ungrateful. Some children just don't appreciate what they're given. The neighbor looked uncomfortable, but Diane kept going. I suppose it's what you'd expect from that family. That night, Emma asked me if it was her fault that Daddy died, if that's why Grandma didn't love her anymore. That's when I realized this wasn't just favoritism. This was emotional abuse, and I was done being a silent witness. 2 months later, Jake's 8th birthday party invitation arrived, addressed only to the family, with a handwritten note. Small gathering this year, hope you understand. When I called to ask if Emma was invited, Diane's response was ice cold. I thought it might be overwhelming for her to see all the other children having fun. That same weekend, my sister-in-law posted photos from the small gathering. It was a full carnival theme with bounce houses and face painting. 15 kids were there, including Emma's cousins from out of state. The caption read, "So blessed to have such wonderful grandchildren." Emma saw it on my phone. Her small finger traced the screen as she looked at all the laughing children. "Why wasn't I invited, Mommy?" During Emma's school play where she had the lead role, I saved seats for her grandparents. The auditorium smelled like old books and nervous excitement. They never showed. Later, I found out they'd driven 3 hours to attend Jake's Little League game the same night, a game where he spent the entire time on the bench. At Easter dinner, Diane announced she was starting college funds for all her grandchildren. The ham sat untouched on my plate as she spoke. Jake will get $200 a month, and Sophia will get $150 since she's younger. When I asked about Emma's fund, Diane shrugged. Well, single parents have different priorities. I'm sure Clara has it handled. My own sister tried to convince me to let it go. Maybe if you made Emma more approachable. She's always so quiet around them. Even my best friend suggested I was being oversensitive. Some grandparents just connect better with certain kids. The worst incident happened at a family reunion. Emma accidentally spilled juice on the white tablecloth. The purple liquid spread across the fabric like a stain on our family's reputation. Diane exploded. "This is exactly why some children can't have nice things. Look what you've done." She made Emma clean it up while the other kids continued playing. I watched my 7-year-old daughter scrub the table with paper towels, her face red with shame. During a family dinner at a nice restaurant, Diane ordered dessert for Jake and Sophia, but told the waitress Emma was full and didn't need anything. The chocolate cake looked rich and tempting as it was placed in front of the other children. When Emma quietly asked why she couldn't have ice cream, Diane snapped, "Because you need to learn that treats are earned, not given." I started noticing patterns everywhere. Family photos where Emma was consistently positioned in the back or cut out entirely. Holiday cards that mentioned our wonderful grandchildren Jake and Sophia. Gift receipts I found in Diane's purse showing she'd spent $300 on each cousin but $15 on Emma. That's when I started keeping records. Photos of the gifts, screenshots of social media posts, recordings of phone conversations. I told myself it was just to have proof if things got worse, but deep down I was building a case. Despite everything, Emma kept trying to win their approval. She'd draw them pictures with crayons, the paper slightly wrinkled from her careful attention. She'd offer to help in the kitchen, ask thoughtful questions about their day. Each time she was met with polite indifference or outright dismissal. My heart broke watching her try so hard for people who'd already decided she wasn't worth their love. What Diane didn't know was that I'd inherited something valuable from my late husband, his photography business and client list. Over the past 2 years, I'd quietly built it into a successful wedding and event photography company. My client base included some of the most prominent families in our area. Lawyers, doctors, business owners, people Diane desperately wanted to impress at her country club and charity events. Every slight against Emma was carefully documented with photos, videos, and witness statements. I'd learned to think like a lawyer, building an ironclad case of emotional neglect and discrimination. Through my photography work, I'd developed relationships with family therapists, child advocates, and even a few judges who'd hired me for their family events. They'd seen my professionalism, and more importantly, they'd heard my story. My business was thriving beyond my wildest dreams. I was booked solid for 18 months out, charging premium rates. Diane thought I was struggling as a single parent, but I was actually more financially secure than I'd ever been. What they didn't know was that I'd been consulting with a family attorney about documenting emotional abuse. Not for a custody case, but for something much more powerful, the truth. I'd also been building a strong social media presence for my business, gaining thousands of followers who loved my heartwarming family photography stories. My platform was ready for the right message at the right time. I was waiting for the perfect moment, an event where Diane's cruelty would be on full display in front of people whose opinions mattered to her. And I knew exactly when that moment would come. My salvation came from an unexpected source. Margaret, Diane's own sister. She'd been watching the favoritism for months and finally called me. "Clara, I can't stay silent anymore. What Diane's doing to Emma is wrong, and I have some things you should know." Margaret told me about Diane's long-standing resentment toward me. She'd never approved of her son's choice to marry a working-class girl and blamed me for taking him away from the family. Emma was just collateral damage in her war against me. My attorney Sarah Chen wasn't just my legal counsel, she'd become a friend. Her own daughter had experienced similar grandparent favoritism and she was personally invested in my case. "We're not just documenting abuse," she told me over coffee, the steam rising from our cups. "We're building a story that will change how this family operates." Dr. Rodriguez, a child psychologist who'd worked with Emma after her father's death, was horrified when I showed her the documentation. "This is systematic emotional neglect," she said, adjusting her glasses as she reviewed the evidence. "The damage to Emma's self-esteem could be permanent if it continues." Meanwhile, Diane was becoming more brazen. She'd started making comments to other family members about my poor parenting choices and Emma's difficult personality. She truly believed she had won, that I was too weak or too dependent on the family to fight back. Diane announced she was hosting a big anniversary party for her and her husband's 40th wedding anniversary. She hired the most expensive caterer in town, rented the country club, and invited everyone who mattered in their social circle. It was going to be her moment to shine. Of course, Emma and I received our invitation, but with restrictions. "The party is adults only until 8 p.m., the invitation read. "Children's activities will be available in the basement. Translation: hide the unwanted grandchild where the important guests won't see her." Sarah and I had been preparing for months. We had evidence, witnesses, and a plan. Margaret had agreed to help by positioning herself where she could record key interactions. Everything was falling into place. Diane had become so comfortable with her behavior that she'd stopped hiding it. At the pre-party family dinner, she openly discussed Emma in the third person while my daughter sat right there. I do worry about Emma's social development. She's so withdrawn compared to the other children. That night, Emma asked me a question that sealed Diane's fate. Mommy, am I broken? Is that why Grandma doesn't want me around? I held my crying daughter and made a promise. Baby, you're perfect exactly as you are. And Grandma is about to learn that. The night of Diane's anniversary party arrived. I dressed Emma in the most beautiful dress I'd ever bought her. A designer piece that cost more than Diane had spent on Emma's last 10 birthdays combined. The navy blue fabric shimmered under the lights as we walked in together, heads high. The country club was packed with Diane's social circle, business leaders, charity board members, judges, and politicians. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing shadows on the walls. This was her audience, the people whose opinions defined her self-worth. Perfect. During cocktail hour, I watched Diane greet guests with fake warmth. The sound of clinking glasses filled the air. When she introduced Jake and Sophia to her friends, she beamed. These are my brilliant grandchildren. When someone asked about Emma, she dismissively said, "Oh, that's Clara's daughter, I'd timed it perfectly. Just as Diane was giving her thank you speech to the gathered crowd, I stood up with a beautifully prepared presentation board, the kind I used for client meetings. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to share something with you about the woman we're honoring tonight. This is a photo documentation of grandmother-grandchild gift exchanges over the past 3 years. I displayed the board showing side-by-side photos. Jake's $500 gifts next to Emma's 5R1s. The room fell silent except for the soft hum of the air conditioning. Here's Christmas 2023. Jake received an iPad and $200 cash. Emma received a used coloring book. Here's Christmas 2024. Sophia got a laptop and designer clothes. Emma got a broken toy from a garage sale. Then I played audio recordings on the microphone. Diane's voice filled the room. Some children just don't appreciate what they're given. It's what you'd expect from that family. She needs to learn that treats are earned. Dr. Rodriguez, who'd been invited as my guest, stood up to address the crowd. What you've just witnessed is documentation of systematic emotional abuse. This child has been deliberately excluded, humiliated, and devalued by someone who should protect her. Diane's face went white. She tried to speak. Clara, this is inappropriate, you're misunderstanding, but I wasn't finished. The last photo I showed was from that morning. Emma's report card showing straight A's and a teacher's note calling her the kindest child in class. Then I read a letter Emma had written to her grandmother, thanking her for the gifts and apologizing for not being good enough. Margaret had been live streaming the entire presentation to her social media, which had thousands of local followers. The room was dead silent as people processed what they'd just witnessed. I looked directly at Diane. You spent years trying to make my daughter feel small. But Emma's worth isn't determined by your approval, it's measured by her character, her achievements, and her kind heart. And by every metric that matters, she's extraordinary. One by one, family members who'd stayed silent began speaking up. Margaret stood first. Diane, what you've done is cruel and wrong. Then Emma's uncle from out of state. I've seen this favoritism for years and should have said something sooner. The country club guests, Diane's precious social circle, were visibly horrified. These were parents and grandparents themselves. They understood exactly what they'd witnessed, and their faces showed their disgust. Finally, my 7-year-old daughter, who'd been standing quietly beside me, spoke into the microphone. Grandma, I just wanted you to love me. I'm sorry I couldn't be good enough. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Diane tried to leave, but her husband, Emma's grandfather, stopped her. He'd been complicit in the favoritism, but seeing it documented so starkly, hearing his granddaughter's pain broke something in him. Diane, he said quietly, look what we've done. Diane left her own anniversary party in shame, her reputation in tatters. The video Margaret had shared went viral locally, with thousands of comments supporting Emma and condemning the grandmother's behavior. Within a week, 3 family members called to apologize for their silence. Emma's grandfather scheduled therapy sessions and asked if he could start over with Emma properly this time. For the first time in years, Emma stopped asking why Grandma didn't love her. Mommy, she said, all those people at the party said I was amazing. I think maybe I am. Diane attempted to apologize through letters and phone calls, but the damage was done. Emma and I had found our peace away from toxic family dynamics. 6 months later, when Emma won the school's citizenship award, her grandfather was in the front row cheering. Diane was noticeably absent, no longer the family matriarch she'd once been. Walking away from that country club, holding Emma's hand, I realized something profound. We didn't need their approval to be a complete family, we already were one. If you've ever had to watch your child be treated as less than by family members who should protect them, you're not alone. Share your story in the comments below. Emma and I read every single one. Where are you watching from tonight? Drop your location and let us know. We love seeing our community grow around the world. Hit that subscribe button if you believe every child deserves to be valued and loved exactly as they are. Your support means everything to families like ours who've had to fight for basic respect. Remember, you don't need anyone's permission to protect your children. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give them is showing them their worth, and that starts with you believing it first. Look at your screen, 2 new videos are waiting. Click quickly because you won't want to miss either of these powerful stories.